Yo, what is up, guys? It's your boy Bernie here along with Sean.
Hey guys, thanks for joining.
And guys, today we're going to bring you some NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions, and emphasis on the basketball opinions as we are now 2 days away from recording this video from the NBA returning. Of course, they're going to be playing in a couple games, and we all know the stipulation, especially when it comes to the 8th and 9th seed. If you're within 4 games, you play in a sudden death playoff game for the 8th seed. Now, Sean, here on this channel, we have done prediction videos. We have done all this stuff before for the preseason, but now we got to do it for the postseason. And the postseason predictions, obviously, due to the pandemic and what's going on, we are actually going to be doing something different. We are going to be going after each, all the teams that have been invited. Obviously, for the Eastern Conference, it was 9 teams, and the Western Conference had 13 teams. Now, we are going to be talking about the Pretenders and the Contenders. So, Sean, let's start off with the Western Conference, which I believe is going to go down to the San Antonio Spurs. Are the Phoenix Suns in it? I believe the Phoenix Suns are in it as well. Let's start with them. Are they the Pretenders? Are they the Contenders? Or are they sleepers?
I'm gonna have to say that they're pretenders. I think they're too young of a team. They're sitting near, the very bottom of the record table right now. I think they have the worst record of the remaining teams. I just don't see them, having the depth and star power to turn it around. They have a Devin Booker who's really good, but outside of that, they're still kind of in a rebuilding mode. They seem to just be, consistently near the bottom, but I don't see them being able to turn it around and make the playoffs or even get into that, eighth, ninth spot battle.
Yeah, and just quickly, I'll just add that before we move on, because it's probably going to be a 3-hour video if we kind of go in depth of every team. I would say the Suns are contenders as well. A young team with Devin Booker still, signing that contract extension. I just don't see anything from the Phoenix Suns that would allow them to get back into that race of getting to near where the Portland Trailblazers are at, or even where the Grizzlies are at this point. So, Suns, you're pretenders. And then let's move on to the next team. We'll kind of go across the conferences. Let's go number 9, the Wizards for the Eastern Conference. What do we make of them?
I love Rui Hachimura, Gonzaga graduate, but I'm going to have to say that they're pretenders as well. They play terrible defense. They definitely play the worst defense in the NBA. Bradley Beal's really good, but they're definitely pretenders. They're not going anywhere.
I think I'm going to have to disagree. I think they're a little bit of a sleeper team, at least to get to that 8th seed. I think that Bradley Beal, coming back is healthy again. John Wall, I'm not sure if I don't think he's playing. But I do think that the Wizards have some pieces here and there that could help them overtake the Orlando Magic to at least get into that playoff situation with them for the 8th seed. And I think that the Wizards could win against the Magic. I know the Magic have some great players, but I think the Magic, in my opinion, have some guys that, Vucevic, they have Aaron Gordon, and they have Jonathan Isaac. I'm not really impressed with the Orlando Magic. I know that they have some decent guys on the team, but I think that the Wizards could sneak in to get into that playoff spot. And moving on to number 12, we got the San Antonio Spurs on the Western Conference side. Sean, pretenders, sleepers?
For the San Antonio Spurs, I'm gonna say that they're sleepers, because I think that they obviously, with Greg Popovich, they have probably one of the best coaches in the NBA. DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge are really good players, and so is DeJounte Murray. I think if they put it all together, there's a good chance they could go on a run here and pull into that 9th spot, and potentially battle for the playoff spot there, because it looks like they're about they're 3 or 4 games behind the Grizzlies and only 2 games behind the Trailblazers, 1 behind the Pelicans. I think that they do have the talent to kind of go on a little run here and make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think they're sleepers just due to the fact that Greg Popovich somehow always finds a way to finesse himself into the playoffs. I think that he has just enough to get the San Antonio Spurs right there and, maybe contend with the Grizzlies to get into that sudden death playoff game. And let's move on to the next team, and that's the Orlando Magic. Contenders, sleepers, pretenders, sleepers, contenders. I am losing track of what I'm saying. What do we make of the Orlando Magic?
Yeah, so currently they're sitting in that eighth seed spot right there. They don't really have any players to me that are super impressive. I mean, Aaron Gordon's good. Markelle Fultz is still, he's not the same player he was when they drafted him with the shoulder injury and such. So I think they need a couple more years to really develop. I'm going to say they're pretenders. I don't think they're going to end up making the playoffs.
Yeah, and just to kind of keep consistent with what I said with the Wizards, I think that they're also pretenders just due to the fact that they're a decently good team, but I do think that Jonathan Isaac and Aaron Gordon are two of the same players. They're tweeners. They're then that between that power forward and that small forward, but they just can't shoot the ball. And Markelle Fultz is still trying to recover from the shoulder injuries that he occurred as a 76er. So I think that the Magic are going to end up being in that sudden death playoff game against the Wizards. And I think that the Wizards are going to eventually overtake them and be the 8th seed. Moving on to the next team that we have is, of course, the Sacramento Kings, led by Luke Walton. What do we make of the Kings?
The Kings, to me, I would have said they were a sleeper team, and they have a really interesting lineup. But Marvin Bagley won't be returning for the rest of the playoffs or the rest of the run of the season due to injury. So if he had returned and was healthy, and him with De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield, I think that would have been a pretty scary looking lineup that could have gone on a run. But I'm gonna have to say that they're pretenders now because it's really just going to be the De'Aaron Fox show, and I don't think he's enough to carry him by himself.
I completely agree with you. The Kings are pretenders in this situation, just due to the fact that even though I've been on this channel regardless, I've talked about it. I'm not a big Marvin Bagley fan. But he still is a player that could add some tremendous value to the Kings. And the fact that he's out, it's going to be De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, who's improved tremendously throughout his career. Nevertheless, I do think that De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield are not enough to overtake teams like the Portland Trailblazers or even the Pelicans at this point. So I have to put them in that pretender category.
Yep.
Now, moving on to the 7th seed, and that is, of course, the Brooklyn Nets. They have, of course, their own issues with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving not being able to play for them. But what do we make of the Brooklyn Nets?
I say just write them off. I think that they may fall just completely out of it. I mean, see, this is the thing. The Wizards will have to go on a pretty big run to get that, kind of competition to get that 9 seed. But the Nets don't really have the talent to win many games, I don't think. So, especially, with Kyrie and KD gone, there is a chance that I think, the Nets and the Magic might just go on a little bit of a losing streak, and the Wizards can, get up there and maybe compete for it. But as far as making a run in the playoffs, even if the Nets do qualify, they have no chance. They have 2 of the best players in the NBA, but they're not playing.
Exactly. And I think that's the reason why you have to put them in that pretender spot. Although they signed Jamal Crawford, who's still going to get buckets at 40 years old, I think that's the reason why they brought him back, was to get those last remaining buckets so he can retire and, have a great career. Whether he's in the playoffs or not, let's see if the Magic and the Nets have the same record at 30 and 34 for the Nets and 30 and 35 for the Magic. I just don't see anything else on this team. Spencer Dinwiddie, Jarrett Allen, who I like. I love the role players, but that's just not the team that Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are accustomed to. I could see the Nets going on a little bit of a run just due to the fact that they don't have those 2 stars, and they seem to play better without them. Well, maybe not Durant, but especially Kyrie. I know that Kyrie's kind of had issues everywhere he's gone besides Cleveland. But I do think that they are pretenders just due to the fact that they're without their 2 superstars. And moving on to number 10 for the Western Conference is, of course, going to be the New Orleans Pelicans. Sean, I know how you feel about them. What do we make?
I really am not a big fan of the Pelicans, but they have so much talent. They honestly do. And so, if Zion and Brandon Ingram can just pull them on a run, there's a chance they could catch up to the Grizzlies and force that playoff spot. I think if any of those teams that are currently outside of the top 8 seeds have a chance of making it into the playoffs and going on to an actual run as well, not just, maybe a first round exit. I think that's one that they can, push a top seed farther in the series. I would say that's the Pelicans. But, the big question is, are they going to be able to make the playoffs in the first place? Because they're not currently a top 8 seed.
Exactly. And I do have them as one of my sleeper teams, just to kind of spoiled my surprise. the reason why I just have them as a spoiled team or a team that could be a potential sleeper team is the fact that I think Lonzo Ball has tremendously improved. Brandon Ingram has kind of gone out of the shadow of a LeBron James and has finally become that star player. Obviously not that superstar yet, but become that star player and is getting buckets no matter where he's at on the court. Lonzo, with his passing ability and improved three-point shooting, you now have to actually guard him out there. And obviously you got guys like Hart who are great three-point shooters. And then you have Zion Williamson, the young rookie, who could potentially, be an X factor for any of these teams, especially if he's able to kind of recover. I know that he's out of the bubble and he's now back in. He's in protocol and he's going to return to the team actually tomorrow, Wednesday, the 29th. So we'll see what happens with that team. I'm curious to know, can the Pelicans make a big run and get to that, sudden death playoff matchup against the Grizzlies, or whether it's the Trailblazers, but most likely it's going to be the Grizzlies.
How many games are they all playing? Is it 8 or 9 more games or something?
I think it's 10, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough for any team to kind of flip the standings, especially when you look at the East. So it seems like it's going to be a really big stretch for that kind of playoff lineup just to move around at all.
Exactly. And let's move on to the next team that we have here, and that is, of course, going to be the 76ers, who are the 6th seed. Sean, contenders, sleepers, pretenders, what do we make?
I saw a video of Ben Simmons hitting step-back three-pointers. So if Ben Simmons has added the three-point shot to his game, they could be sleepers here. I think, Joel Embiid's a really, really good player. Ben Simmons is good. Al Horford. I like them to be able to go on a run here. I don't know who they'd face in their first round if all things stand. But
they'd face the Celtics at this point.
Face the Celtics. Okay, that'd be a really good series, and I think that they would have a chance to, potentially pull an upset there. The Celtics are pretty good too, but I think the 76ers might be a sleeper for me.
I think I'm going to have to agree with you there. I mean, a sleeping giant in the 76ers, no pun intended, for Joel Embiid. I do think that Joel Embiid could be the X factor if he's healthy. Obviously, Ben Simmons has to shoot the ball. I know that, he's more interested in dating Kardashians rather than working on his jumper. And I've kind of criticized him for that. But if he's able to hit these jumpers that, we've seen him practice these jumpers before. But the problem is that he's never taking them. And that's going to be the biggest issue I have with the 76ers. If Ben Simmons is not shooting the ball, he's honestly not effective on the court with Joel Embiid. I think Ben Simmons has to come off the bench and be with the second unit if he's going to be effective in terms of, slashing and cutting to the basket and dunking, because otherwise the 76ers don't really have that much shooting on the outside, and that's kind of going to be a concern. But I do believe that their record against the Celtics and playing against them, it's a very competitive and tough series. So I could see them being sleepers if they're ending up getting past the Celtics, but we'll find out from there. All right, guys, and let's move on to the 9th team in the Western Conference. That is, of course, going to be the Portland Trailblazers. Sean, contenders, pretenders, sleepers, what are they to you?
You never really want to rule out Damian Lillard when it comes down to, around playoff time. But I think, they're 3 or 4 games behind the Grizzlies. Grizzlies have been playing well. And so for me, I see that Portland, they do probably have the best chance at getting close enough to force that extra playoff game for the 8th spot. I know Carmelo Anthony has slimmed down so he can play small forward so they can adjust their lineup. I'm going to be excited to see what they do. So I'm going to put them as a sleeper for now, because I do think they have the best shot out of all the other teams to be able to contend for that 8th spot in a little playoff game.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm going to have to put them as pretenders. I know that they have skinny Carmelo now. They have, CJ McCollum. They have Damian Lillard. But to me, I think with those 2 guards, I think it's a very big I don't know. Every time I see them playing in big playoff games, they seem to always kind of lack the moment. I know that they played a big series against the Thunder a couple years back, when it was, Russell Westbrook was on the team. But I just don't think that the Trailblazers have the kind of capability of getting to the finals. I think that they are a good team. They're just not a great team. And I think that they're just missing that X factor. And I think if they had Carmelo maybe 10 years ago, if they had that Carmelo, and obviously, that's semantics and whatnot, I think that they would obviously have a chance and they'd be contenders. But I just think I see them as more of pretenders due to the fact that they seem to always have the same problem, which is, whether it's, it's first Damian Lillard's turn to score, then it's CJ McCollum's. And if one's cold, then the game is basically over for them.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And moving on to the 5th seed, and that is, of course, the Indianapolis Pacers. Sean, the Pacers, obviously, I think Victor Oladipo is going to be playing with them. Are they contenders, pretenders, sleepers? I know they have one of your guys on the team.
They do. Domantas Sabonis, he's really good. He is currently dealing with like plantar fasciitis in his foot. I don't know. He had to leave the bubble for treatment on it. I don't know if that's going to affect him. But if he's healthy, I like them as a sleeper. He's a really, really good player. Very efficient. And if you said Victor Oladipo's coming back,
I believe so, yes.
So if he's coming back, I think that, they have a chance to kind of go on a run. I don't know how effective he'll be right away. But, they also have Malcolm Brogdon, who's good, and Miles Turner is a good defensive player. So I think that they do have a chance, if they're healthy, to go on a little run here. So I'm going to say they're sleepers.
I think for me, I have them as pretenders, just due to the fact that you're going to have Oladipo coming back from injury. If you talked about Sabonis with the fasciitis injury, I just think that other than those two, they don't really have much to go with. I mean, Sabonis has been kind of the MVP of the team this year, just due to the fact that he's able to carry them and get them to the 5th seed, which many of us probably, myself included, just didn't expect them to get even this high. I expected them to kind of fall out into like the 9th or 10th place. So I think that with the Indianapolis Pacers, I see them as more pretenders. I think that if everyone was healthy, I would see them as sleepers. But because everyone's hurt, I'm going to have them as my pretenders. And moving on to the 8th seed, Sean's team, we have the Memphis Grizzlies led by Ja Morant. Sean, what do you make of the Grizzlies?
I like them a lot. I know I'm a little biased here, but Ja Morant, Brandon Clark, they're just, dunk fest waiting to happen. I think they have a lot of energy. And, if you look at their games against those higher up seeds, like the Lakers and the Clippers, they basically split the series with them. And so I think it's all going to come down to really how does Ja Morant lead them, and will Jaren Jackson Jr. be able to, turn on his game? He's had some really bad games and he's had some really good games. But I think if they're going to need to be able to go off, Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be averaging, 24 points or so. You can always count on Jonas Valanciunas to just put up a double-double. But I really think that it's all going to come down to how does Jaren Jackson Jr. play and how does Ja Morant play. I'm excited to see Brandon Clark return to the court too. I hope he gets more minutes than he had been getting because he's really efficient, really smart player. But for me, I have them as contenders. And I want Dillon Brooks to shoot less.
I was waiting for you to talk about Dillon Brooks. But yeah, I think for them, I see them as more as pretenders, not due to the fact that I think that they're phony or anything like that. I think they're a great team. I just think that they're a couple years away from being one of those top 4 teams. And I think that when Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson, especially Jaren Jackson Jr., really needs to step it up. Obviously, he's great for what he's doing right now, but I think that he has the ability to turn it up a little bit. And that just comes with time and experience. So I think that I have the Grizzlies as kind of that pretenders, just the fact that they're young. But I do think that they have a chance in the future to be a top 4 team with their roster. I like the way that they built it through the draft. Actually, some great draft pieces and some draft players, especially, guys like Brandon Clark. I've watched a couple games now. Now I have more free time. I've seen a lot more Grizzlies games just due to the fact that Sean also wants me to watch them and kind of, recommended them to me. I do see them having a future, but I just don't think it's going to be this year. I think it'll have to be next year.
Yeah, I hope they end up getting someone like Bradley Beal to replace Dillon Brooks, but we'll see. Do you think that they hold on to that 8 spot, or do you think they are going to not make the playoffs?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think obviously they made the 9th place rule. You've kind of alluded to the Zion Williamson treatment as to why they've added it.
They added that solely for Zion because there's like one other team in the East. Like clearly they added a bunch of extra spots out West so Zion could make his run. That's my conspiracy.
That's the conspiracy. But nevertheless, I think that the Grizzlies are going to hold on to it. I think that I think it's going to be between the Grizzlies and the Pelicans, in my opinion. And I just think that the Grizzlies, I think they just gel well together. And I think the Pelicans are still trying to learn how to play with each other. I know pause on that. That sounded kind of weird. But I think that they have the ability to become a great team. And I think that they can be a team where I could potentially see them as someone that could be, like I said, like a Grizzlies, where they could be in the top 5 in a couple years. But I think that they need a little bit more seasoning before they can do that. And let's move on to the number 4 team. It looks like, obviously there's less Eastern Conference teams, so are moving quickly up the ranks. The Miami Heat are in the 4th place. And do we see them as pretenders, sleepers, or contenders?
For me, I think they're pretenders. I'm surprised at the record they have, and I guess the East is a little weaker. So that's probably how they slipped all the way up into a 4 seed. But I mean, Jimmy Butler's good, but I don't think Jimmy Butler's a massive game changer. I think they're going to have a first-round exit.
Oh, against the Pacers. Interesting. Well, if it holds like this, it might be the Pacers. We'll never know. Obviously, they're tied right now with the 76ers. But I do think I see them as contenders or sleepers, just due to the fact that I think that even though Jimmy Butler is a great player, it's not because of Jimmy Butler that I think the Miami Heat are really good. I think it's because of Bam Adebayo, who for me should be winning Most Improved Player of the Year. I think that his contribution to the team is very, very underrated. And I think that he's kind of showing teams and leagues that he should have been drafted a little bit higher. I know he was more of I think he was either 13 or 15. I can't remember what number he was picked in the draft. But I think that Bam has the ability to be a versatile center. And I think that, you got a rookie like Tyler Hero, obviously a great player. You have guys like Duncan Robinson, another great player. I think that they have a core nucleus, and I think that Eric Spoelstra, a very underrated coach, just due to the fact that LeBron James was his former player, and a lot of people kind of contribute that to why the Heat did so well. But I think Eric Spoelstra did a good job commanding the team and has kind of built his repertoire and kind of built his respect around the league with the ability to coach. And we kind of see the example of it as they are now, in the 4th seed. And I would have never guessed that the Heat would be in the 4th seed. I would have guessed them to be like 7th or 8th, trying to fight for a playoff spot, but they're actually well within the driver's seat. But now we're going to see a situation where do they have enough to beat the likes of, because they're going to be facing the Pacers, but then the next round they face the Bucks. So we'll see what happens with that situation. And next team we have is, of course, the Dallas Mavericks. Mavericks, obviously led by Luka Doncic and the unicorn, Kristaps Porzingis.
Yep.
Sean, what do we make of the Dallas Mavericks?
I really like them. I think they're contenders, but what I think I think it's all going to come down to Porzingis's play, because you can always expect like a 30-point triple-double out of Luka, but Porzingis has shrunk and he has disappeared in a lot of games this season. There were some games where he went off for 30 plus points, but I think they're going to need that, and they're going to need that scoring consistently. They don't have a lot of high scorers outside of Luka. And so, Seth Curry can heat up, but he's no Steph. But I think if Kristaps Porzingis, goes on a run here and plays up to the potential that he's supposed to be playing at, I don't see any reason why that duo shouldn't be, one of the most feared duos in the playoffs, besides, Anthony Davis and LeBron James. So,
yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you. I think that they're more sleepers than contenders. I think Luka Doncic is a great player. Obviously, we talk about his triple doubles, the way that he's able to attack the rim, shoot the ball, do everything. He was the player that I know that he was supposed to be since they drafted him. I'm not trying to be smug and arrogant about that. But I think, like you said, the X factor is Kristaps Porzingis. Is he going to show up? Because that's the biggest question mark that everyone has around the league. We know that Kristaps Porzingis added more muscle. We know that that's the reason why teams were able to kind of push him around. And, that's kind of the reason why he got hurt, is because I don't think that he was working out. But now we see a different Kristaps. But we need that Kristaps to be strong and dominant, because we've seen many times numerous examples of him not being that way, and has cost the team cost the team a lot of games. I mean, they faced the Lakers in one series where it was at Dallas, and the Dallas Mavericks lost because I think Kristaps Porzingis doesn't really have that edge factor that I think that the Mavericks traded for. I think that he's a stretch four, but they want him to be more dominant. But the problem is that I feel like he gets pushed around easily. And like you said, I mean, he's going to be the biggest X factor going into their playoff series.
Yep. I do think they're a well-coached team too. So the Mavericks have a history of going on runs when they're not supposed to. So I'm excited to see what happens. It looks like, their record's tied with Houston Rockets, the Thunder, and the Jazz just have one more win than them. So it'll be interesting to see how the whole playoff picture ends up lining up here.
Yeah, exactly. And moving on to the third team in the Eastern Conference, we have the Boston Celtics, led by Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, and of course Jaylen Brown. Sean, what do we make of them? Are they sleepers, contenders, pretenders?
I'd say they're contenders. I'd say they have a good shot to potentially pull off an upset and win the entire East here. Jason Tatum has emerged into an absolute monster. And, they have three players averaging over 20 points per game: Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, and Tatum. And, Gordon Hayward can go off at any point, too. Marcus Smart's a great defender and can score. And then they have Enes Kanter, so they have some big size, too. To me, it just feels like this team is built to go on a run. Kemba Walker's a star, even though Jason Tatum's, came out of nowhere and it eclipsed him in this his third year.
This is third year, yeah.
Yeah, and he's really grown into a complete star, averaging about 24 a game. I think they're contenders, and I think especially since the East is a little weaker, I think that, if any team's going to be able to take down the Bucks and Giannis, I think it's going to be the Celtics.
And I 100% agree with you. I think that they are contenders. I think they have the best shot, and they're the most well-balanced team. I know the Bucks have, a great record and all that, but I just think that the Celtics just have a well-balanced team. Jaylen Brown, more of a shooting off the corners, can drive and attack the rim. Jason Tatum, more of the all-around star. Enes Kanter, not known for his defense, but known for more of his offense. And I think a lot of the players on that team, obviously, are going to do a good or well enough job, especially under Brad Stevens, who gets a lot of – I think this is the reason why I think Kyrie Irving didn't work, is because I think the Kyrie Irving didn't buy into the system of Brad Stevens, which is almost where not one star is focused on. It's everybody gets a share of the rock, and I think he kind of has that sort of Golden State Warriors mentality where you don't need to have the ball to be effective. If you make the right cuts, if you make the right reads, you're able to get the ball easily and you're able to score the ball. And I think that the problem is that Kyrie Irving likes to dribble and attack the rim, but this is not an ISO ball. And this is not even to talk about Kyrie Irving and bash him, but I think the Celtics are a more well-balanced team. They have a team that could potentially be in the Eastern Conference Finals and face the Lakers, and we could kind of renew that Lakers-Celtics rivalry that was back in the late 2010s and also, back in the 80s. But I think that they have the best shot out of any team, like you said, to beat the Bucks.
Yeah.
And let's move on to the sixth place team, the Houston Rockets, who have led by James Harden and Russell Westbrook. Are they contenders? Are they sleepers? What do we make of them?
I would say they're pretenders. I think that they play a lot of ISO ball. I don't think James Harden and Russell Westbrook, despite their stats being good, work together that well. And I don't think there's other pieces around them besides, really just those two players to be able to go on a run. I don't see them being able to pull off a run here. I think they're a team that could potentially, be a first-round exit in the playoffs.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I've always said this from the start, from when we did our preseason videos here on The Charge. I think the problem with the Houston Rockets is the fact that there's too much ISO ball going on, and I think that it goes to show you that that system doesn't work. Yes, they were within a game, a couple of years back with the Golden State Warriors to actually, get to the NBA Finals, but it kind of goes to show you that the analytics and the way that they play the game, it just doesn't lead you to a championship. It just leads you to more exits in the Western Conference, or whether it's the second round. I think that James Harden and D'Antoni, especially D'Antoni, needs to come up with a better system. I know D'Antoni's more offensive minded, but they need to come up with a better system for him, I think, in order to get him to be effective. Maybe he needs to be the point guard, and maybe they need to do something with Russell Westbrook. I know that Russell Westbrook is a guy that likes to shoot, but he's not a very effective shooter. I think he's gotten worse as his career has gone on. And I think that kind of goes to show that he needs to change his game up a lot more. And the fact that they don't have any bigs, I know that this is cliche and old school, but I still think you need at least one or two bigs on the roster that are effective to help you win those championship games. And I think that because they don't have that, and James Harden doesn't get the same amount of calls as he does in the regular season than he does in the postseason. So I think we're going to be seeing a dramatic shift with James Harden, and that he's going to get fatigued. He's going to get upset because he's not getting the call, and that's going to cost them the games.
Yep.
And then let's move on to the second place team in the Eastern Conference, and that was, of course, the Toronto Raptors. Obviously, the defending NBA champions. No Kawhi Leonard this year, but they're still a very good team with some great players. Sean, what are they to you?
I think they're definitely contenders. I mean, I think Pascal Siakam's really emerged. I love how Fred VanVleet plays and Kyle Lowry. They're almost just the opposite style of what the Houston Rockets are. They're like the opposite of iso ball. They don't do that. They pass probably better than any other team in the NBA. And that's why you see their records so consistently good. You know, you think losing someone like Kawhi Leonard would just, make their team tank, but look at them again. They're in the 2 seed. And Pascal Siakam has emerged as almost just like a perfect replica of Kawhi. I think they have a great system, great coaching, and I think they work together well, and they're definitely contenders for me.
Yeah, for me, I think they're a sleeper team. I think that they have the roster. I like Pascal Siakam. I like OG Amanube. I can't remember. I can't just butchered his name there. But they have some great young players that I really like on this team. And obviously, they're still young. They're still going to be growing and developing. And I think that this team has a potential chance to not, between them and the Celtics, to take on the Bucks and beat them. I think that the Raptors, are led by Nick Nurse, who I think doesn't get enough credit for what he's done. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard's a great player, but the fact that he's kind of changed the system now and has allowed the Raptors to become this team that's 46-18, a second place team, I think that they're going to do a very good job this season, and we could potentially see them in the Eastern Conference Finals and potentially being in the NBA Finals again. And then moving on to the fifth place team, and that is, of course, the Oklahoma City Thunder, who many of us written off. We thought that they were going to be, a lottery team, but that's just not the case. Chris Paul, the snitch police, ends up being the 5th seed in the Western Conference for now. He could potentially get higher, he could potentially get lower. But Sean, what do we make of the Oklahoma City Thunder and the way that they've been playing this season?
Yeah, they're a big surprise for me because I did not expect them to really even be competitive. To me, like when I looked at their roster, I didn't see a team that, would be in contention for the playoffs. But I think Chris Paul is someone who's just a solid leader who gets people to play, better ball together. He's not someone who needs to put up a ton of stats, but he's someone who actually runs an offense. He's more of like an old school point guard. And I think that actually kind of benefits for, when a team doesn't have a bunch of stars. For instance, just like looking at the Toronto Raptors, besides Pascal Siakam, they don't have a ton of stars, but the way they move the ball around and the way they run their offense, it just adds up to getting wins. And so I still am going to go ahead here and say that they're pretenders. And that's just simply because they're not as good as a team like the Raptors who moves the ball around, but they do play good team ball, but I just don't see them in contention for anything.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. They are the pretenders here. I know that Chris Paul has led them to this record, but who else do they have? I mean, they have Dennis Schroeder, Gallinari, Shai Gilgeous, who is still a young player. I do think that we'll be seeing some interesting situations from that team. But like you said, if they don't have that star player, and, the playoffs are made for stars. And if you don't have that star player in his prime, like if this was Chris Paul 10 years ago, this would be no fans or buts. I think they would be contenders. But I think a young Shai Gilgeous still growing. Dennis Schroeder, backup point guard. Nerlens Noel, backup center. Steven Adams, the starting center, but not really an offensive threat besides, pick and roll and dunks. I think that we're going to be seeing them as pretenders and probably a first-round exit, in my opinion. And then let's move on to the next team, which is, of course, the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, the Milwaukee Bucks. What do we make of them?
Definitely contenders. They have Giannis, who may win, back-to-back MVPs here, and he's just completely changed the game. He's a 6'11", 7'1" wingspan point guard who just is unstoppable. He's a monster. And his team, all the pieces around him just work well with him. They have good shooters, and they just have really solid role players. And so, in all likeliness, they'll probably be the team emerging from the East to face, whoever comes from the West. But they're definitely legit, and they're the contenders.
Yeah, I think they're contenders by default. I think that Giannis has done a great job of solidifying himself as a top superstar player in this league. He's starting to be more well-known between players or people that are not even NBA fans. They're kind of gravitating towards him just due to the fact that he is, we kind of view foreign players as, kind of fan favorites sometimes. I know I do, at least. And I like Giannis. I like his game. I like his story. I think that he's a guy that, if he can develop that jump shot, he could be a very lethal player. But I think the problem with the Bucks, in my opinion, is that, Middleton doesn't show up in a lot of games that I think he should. And that's what's going to cost the Bucks, I feel like, in some series, especially against the Celtics and the Raptors, who are known for moving the ball around and spreading it just like the Bucks are. But I just think that the Celtics have better shooters. They have better role players. And I think that's going to be the problem with the Bucks. And, maybe we might see this be the situation where we see Giannis get frustrated with the Bucks and maybe move to a different team. I'm going to have a video coming out talking about a certain team that might have him as a piece in a couple years. But I think that Giannis has done a great job. I think that they will be contenders, but we'll see who ends up, getting to that final spot for the Eastern Conference. And then let's move to the number 4 team, the Utah Jazz. Obviously, the Jazz had a lot of controversy due to the fact that they were the first team to have the virus. They were also, some tensions and beef between Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell early on. And, they still kind of have that beef a little bit. But what do we make of the Utah Jazz? Are they contenders, pretenders, sleepers?
I would go ahead and say they're sleepers. Donovan Mitchell's really good. Is Bogdanovich injured though? Is he?
He's out. I think he's out for the season.
Okay, I'm gonna have to write them off then. But I mean, they could still be sleepers. But he was such a key piece to their game that's gonna be really hard to replace. Jordan Clarkson, I don't think is that good. He's had a better year, I think better season than he's ever had before. But with that injury of Bogdanovich, I just don't think they'll have enough. And as you mentioned, Gobert and Donovan Mitchell are not on good terms. And so I just think all of that is going to kind of add up to probably a poor showing in the weeks to come.
Yeah, I think with the Utah Jazz, I love Quinn Snyder as a coach. I think he's a, Mercer Island alum. I coach there now. I do like the fact that he has done a great job with this team for as long as he's had them. Well, I just think, like you said, I think that they are pretenders just due to the fact that I think Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert is going to be the biggest storyline going for that team. And I think that because there's so much friction between the two, I don't think that they're going to work together. We might see some instances where Rudy Gobert, maybe it goes through his hands as he's trying to catch for an alley-oop from Donovan Mitchell, and we're going to see some spats and we're going to see some anger coming from both stars. And obviously, you don't want that happening, and we're going to see what happens in the future with those two guys. Are they going to trade Donovan Mitchell? Are they going to trade Rudy Gobert? But I do think that they have a great core nucleus, but I think that, like you said, without Bogdanovich there, I don't think that they're going to be a team that's going to be able to overtake a team like the Lakers, the Clippers, or even the Nuggets. So I have to put them in the pretender spot. And since we have no more teams in the Eastern Conference, we're going to move on to the number 3 team for the Western, and that is, of course, the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets, led by Skinny Jokovic. Now he's skinny. He lost a lot of weight. What do we make of the Denver Nuggets?
Is Bol Bol healthy?
Yes, Bol Bol is healthy and he is playing.
Bol is healthy and he's playing. He looked pretty good in the scrimmage. It's going to be interesting to see what Skinny Jokic does. I'm going to have to put them as sleepers because obviously there's 2 super dominant teams in this conference, but I'm really interested to see how Jokic and Bol Bol play together. Is Bol Bol going to be starting? Will he get good minutes off the bench? I'm not sure. But I like Jamal Murray a lot. And so I think that they do have the talent to do it, but I mean, to make a run and, at least, maybe get to the conference semis, it'll be really tough for them to match up against, the Clippers or the Lakers, though. They might have a better matchup against the Lakers than they would the Clippers, just based on size. But it's going to be interesting to see how the Skinny Jokic experiment, plays out.
Exactly. And I have them as actually one of my sleeper teams, just due to the fact that Jokic, I believe, the big problem with Jokic, I felt like, was that although he was a great passer of the ball, I just thought that his weight was a big hindrance for him because he couldn't move up down the court as fast enough. And I think that because he lost weight, because he's actually kind of taken some pounds off his feet and off his knees, I think that he's actually going to be a lot more effective. I mean, his passing ability is not going to go away. His passing ability, is still there. He's able to, we've seen it in the scrimmage, pass it to Bobo, making those kind of passes that you would see more from like a Magic Johnson-esque type of player. Jokic can make. So I think that they are sleepers. Obviously, Jamal Murray's another player that could help as well. Bobo, let's see, like you said, we'll see how many minutes he gets. But I think that they could potentially be sleepers due to the fact that they're one game behind, or maybe they're 2 games behind, just due to the fact that they have 22 losses behind the Clippers. And we could see maybe they might get that second seed and kind of take it away from the Clippers. But nevertheless, I do think that this team is fun to watch. They're very interesting, and we'll see what happens with Mike Malone as he revolutionizes this team with his all-big lineup. We'll move on to the top 2 teams of the Western Conference, the Juggernauts, due to the fact that they have 2 of the best players in the league. Let's start first with the LA Clippers. Are they contenders, pretenders, sleepers?
Definitely contenders. They just need to make sure they stop hitting up Magic City. I know Lou Will might miss some games now because of that. And I know Pat Beverly says he's day-to-day. So if they can get healthy, it should end up being a Clipper-Laker conference final there, which, it seems like Kawhi Leonard is LeBron James is just Bane. So I'm excited to see that. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard play well together. They're both dominant players. And I think that they'll probably, be a contender and they'll end up in the conference final. I can't make a prediction on who's going to win that, whether it's the Lakers or the Clippers, but I do think both those top 2 seeds will be the ones that end up in that final.
Yeah, just like you, they're obvious contenders due to the fact that they are going to they have the best player, or one of the best players in the league, in Kawhi Leonard. Paul George is also a great player as well. I think that he kind of disappears in the playoffs a little bit. But I do like the fact that this team's core nucleus is still intact. Obviously, Lou Williams is going to hurt them by missing, I believe, 2 games due to his 10-day quarantine and is, getting some wings and some fries at Magic City. Obviously, the NBA is investigating that, seeing what's going on with that situation. But nevertheless, I do like this team. I think they have a great core nucleus. I love the fact that Montrezl Harrell is on the team. I think Montrezl Harrell is a great X factor for them, along with guys like Lou Will, along guys like Patrick Beverly, again, a guy that, gets under the skin of a lot of players, and he has the ability to do that. And that's going to be a fun thing to watch, especially if it's going to be a Lakers-Clippers finals, Western Conference finals. But, we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a lot of fun watching the Clippers. Obviously, they're a couple games ahead of the Nuggets and the Jazz, but they're going to have to keep that going if they want to kind of secure that spot as the number 2 seed.
We got to see Lakers versus Clippers first game on the 30th.
Yep. So 2 days away from this recording.
That's going to be exciting.
And then let's move on to, of course, the number 1 team in the Western Conference, led by the most polarizing player in the league, I felt like, in the last, I don't even know how long. LeBron James and the LA Lakers. Contenders, sleepers, pretenders.
I mean, they're obviously contenders, but it's going to be tough. Is Rajon Rondo going to miss the entire season?
I believe so.
He's done for the season.
I think he's done for the season.
That's actually a pretty big loss for them, just as someone who can help facilitate the offense outside of just LeBron running point guard. Because LeBron has been averaging like 10.6 assists a game, but it's really, I think it's going to depend on, how well is Kyle. I think Kyle Kuzma is going to be probably the main factor here, just because Anthony Davis and LeBron James always show out. They're going to give you 25, 30 points. Playoff mode, LeBron, he's a beast. Anthony Davis is obviously a top 5 player in the game, but, will the other players who have to step up to take over for Rajon Rondo and Avery Bradley, who's not joining them? Is Danny Green and Kyle Kuzma and KCP, are they going to be able to step up and, make up for the absence of Avery Bradley and Rondo? Are they going to be able to facilitate the ball, and are they going to be able to score more? Because right now, Kuzma's averaging 12.5 points a game, and they don't have a single player averaging over 10 besides just LeBron and Anthony Davis. So for me, they're not necessarily in the best position that they were just, a month ago or 2 months ago before the season kind of got suspended. But I think they're contenders, but I think they have a long road ahead of them.
Yeah, I think for me, I have them as contenders. And I think that due to the fact that they signed guys like Dion Waiters, they signed J.R. Smith, I think that although J.R. Smith had that blunder in the finals, we can, debate that for ad nauseum. But I think that they have the best roster, I feel like, to win an NBA championship. I know that Anthony Davis and LeBron James are going to be getting your points. The one concern I do have, and you brought it up, is Kyle Kuzma. I think that Kuzma right now in the bubble, especially watching some of his games, he's been a little ball centric, a little ball heavy, attacking the rim when there's nothing there. I think LeBron James has to rein him in just a little bit when it comes to the playoffs, because I do think that he kind of goes rogue at times and he costs the team points and possessions that they desperately need, especially if they're going to be without Rondo, they're going to be without Bradley. Obviously, they're going to have Dwight Howard back. And I think that because of that, I'm concerned only due to the fact that I think Kyle Kuzma might get his minutes reduced due to the fact that they signed guys like J.R. Smith and Dion Waiters. And it'll be a fun, interesting experience to see how LeBron James handle this. Either way, like, this is just going to be a fun NBA playoffs. I'm excited for it. We're a couple days away, but I do think that the Lakers roster, without adding those guys, without Kyle Kuzma stepping up, I think that it's going to be an interesting situation to see, can the Lakers overcome. That's going to do it here, Sean. If you had to predict a winner of each conference, maybe we don't have to say the final winner, but if you had to predict a winner, who would be your winner for the both conferences?
The Eastern Conference, I would go with the Boston Celtics. And for the Western Conference, I'd probably go with the Clippers right now.
Okay. I'm going to disagree with you on both. I'm going to go with the Bucks as the winner of the Eastern Conference. I think Giannis finally gets to his first NBA Finals. And then for the Western Conference, I'm going to have the LA Lakers, and LeBron James is going to overcome Kyle Kuzma's inability to score at times. I mean, I know I'm dogging on Kyle Kuzma, but I just think that he's going to cost the team some games if they don't kind of rein him in and talk to him about, like, hey, we need to start moving the ball.
Kuzma was supposed to develop like Jason Tatum did, and Kuzma is just not developed.
Yeah, I mean, there was even talks, going back to videos, is it Brandon Ingram that you want, or was it Kyle Kuzma?
They should have kept Brandon Ingram.
And obviously, I think the Pelicans knew that, and that's why they took Brandon Ingram instead of Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah.
And, this will be an interesting situation. Nevertheless, this will be so much fun watching. Obviously, the bubble is going to be a different experience. The one thing I hope that the NBA doesn't do is add CGI fans. I know that MLB was using that for their Fox Sports, or for their Fox MLB games. And I just think that's weird. Let's not fake it. Let's make it as accurate as possible. We're in a pandemic. It is what it is. And I think that we should just deal with no fans in the stands.
Yep.
But nevertheless, let us know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think of this whole ordeal? Do you guys agree with our pretenders, our contenders, and our sleepers? Who do you guys agree with our list? Do you guys disagree with our list? Let us know in the comment section down below. But this is going to be, like I said, a fun series to watch.
Yep. Go Grizz.
Go Grizz. Anyway, guys, please remember to like and subscribe to this video. Remember, guys, we are about, a couple of 100 subscribers away from getting to that 1,000 subscriber mark. Can we get to that subscriber mark of 1,000? We'd greatly appreciate it. And also remember to hit that like button. Can we get at least 25 likes on this video? I'm asking for 25 this time. And we'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.
Peace.